Hello everyone, I'm Professor Margaret Rogers Van Coops, but I like people to call me Dr. Margaret. Actually, the reason that I'm making this video is to pronounce, or even better word, advertise or promote that we have actually got Sumaris Education Centre and Clinic. And of course, if you don't know me or you don't know what I do, then to you it's just something similar to other doctors. Well, I'm here to let you know that I do nothing like any other doctors. I'm born into this world with a psychic ability. So my very first step into this world as an infant was to heal people who'd been shocked and harmed by V1 bombs bombing London in 1942. And by the time I was 5, I was healing an entire regiment that belonged to my father. And by the time I was 20, I was a medium in England. And by the time I was 30, I was a household name, well known for all my abilities at that time as a healer, lecturer, teacher, demonstration of bringing messages from the other side, a trance medium, and little did I push in those days my other training as nurse and my studies in psychology and psychiatry, and my ordination as a minister, and many other things that I can do. So basically, in a nutshell, I'm what you call the original pioneer even of the word oneness, because when I was a very small child, only 5 years old, yes, I did hear the voice of God in sound around, which didn't even exist in those days. And there I am looking up at the light, where's this coming from? And I'm hearing, I am the one, because I asked, who are you? I am the one. And what is the one? I am all that is. And what is all that is? Everything that you see is oneness. And I asked, what is oneness? And I got, I am oneness. I am God. And so here I was, a small child, running around telling everyone that I could meet, I know the oneness, God speaks to me. And they go, yes, dear, she's a bit fanciful, But as the years went by the time I was 20, I could download any entity that wanted to speak through me, whether they were someone who just passed on, especially after World War II, when there were so many people who had passed on unexpectedly and who were damaged. And so I spent a lot of time rescuing earthbound spirits who were in some way trapped because of the awful way of their death. And that went on for many, many years. So by the time I was 15, 16, I had become very much aware of the fact that if I talked about what I could do in those days, people would just push me aside as strange, unusual, awkward, different, and so on. Can you imagine how isolated I felt in those days, wanting to be accepted for who I was, and always getting the door shut in my face, as it were, psychologically, emotionally, mentally, and physically. But it made me tough. It made me realize the hardships of World War II. I went through ration books and going without, and mother running around trying to live like she's still in money when we have nothing. Yes, poverty hit England a great deal during World War II, and so I grew up with having second-hand hand-me-downs from 3 or 4 different generations of people who'd gone before me, who'd survived the war, whose parents were saying, my kid has outgrown their shoes, or they've outgrown their sweaters or night clothes. And we would have what we call church jumble sales, where people would bring those things. And sure enough, there was Mom rummaging away to find all the things that she could fit on herself or on any of us in the family. So my sister and I grew up with second-hand robes, second-hand clothes, etc., etc. And I'm sure a lot of you older folks listening will understand what I'm talking about when I say you live to survive. And of course, once I put this up on the YouTube, people are going to say in far off countries like Egypt, Syria, and all these terrible countries are being bombed right now, that nobody over there understands what we're going through. Well, believe you me, I understand. My soul is still scarred. Even though I'm trying to control myself here, I know how they're feeling. And I send love and goodwill to them, no matter who they are, no matter what's going down. It's not their identity we're interested in, it's their spirits, their souls, and they have a right to be loved. So, why am I here today? Well, I have been very fortunate in that someone has given us a top floor in Lake Havasu City. And that person is Jeannie Chow, who is an Oriental healer, does acupuncture and things like that, cupping, different things. So I went to see her, and when she saw what I did, she offered me the top floor, which was, well, to say the least, a storage unit that hadn't been touched in years. So we renovated it, fixed it up, and now we have Sumaris Education Center and Clinic. Okay. Now, you might say, well, what are we doing there? Well, the first thing is we're trying to help people learn about themselves and how to live a life that fulfills them without having to sacrifice themselves all the time. So it is my intention to have a series of workshops. There'll only be 2 hours of an evening, and we will do 1 or 2 a month. I'm not charging a fortune. We're only charging $20. That's $10 an hour, which is no different from going to college. Okay, and come and I will talk for a while, as I'm talking now, for about half an hour, and then you will go through a series of exercises that are fun to do. And in the process of doing those exercises, you will awaken in some sense of your 5 senses to realize, oh, I never saw myself like that, or oh, I didn't realize I could be different, or oh, there is an alternative way to think, or yes, there is something I can do to help myself feel better emotionally, mentally, physically, and spiritually. So, what does Dr. Margaret Rogers Van Coops do? Okay. Well, let me go back in time in my life so you can understand and trust me a little bit more. Having been born a medium without knowing what a medium was, I had to learn and evolve and grow. And as a result of my ultimate being accepted by the Spiritualist Association of Great Britain in England in my 30s, after having gone to so many churches giving proof of survival of life after death and giving channeled talks from the oneness, proving what the spirit world was like and so on, I finally was made an honorary member of the Spiritualist Association of Great Britain, which at that time was a supreme honor. And now today I think they've probably forgotten who I am, because people come and go, new generations, and unfortunately they did have 2 floods. And so when I went back to say, I'd like a copy of my diploma that says I'm an honorary member, they looked at me like, who are you? Didn't matter though, because I realized I'd much evolved from the way things were still happening in England. So here I'm going out on a limb to say, England is behind the times when it comes to understanding the psychic skills and how to use them in our everyday life so that we don't mess up, so that we do make the right friends, that we do make the right choices in work, and we do become the person we want to be. And so the way of time now is to teach a lot of things online. And I will be doing that soon too, once I master Zoom.com. And by the way, if you're watching this and you know how to work Zoom.com, I would be eternally grateful for you to come and teach me, and we'll come to some kind of arrangement about that. But let me get back into why I'm doing this. I'm doing this because I have a physical center, and that center will be going on for as long as I can until I can find somewhere on a ground floor. So I have to say right up front, even before I tell you everything I do, that it is upstairs and you do have to climb about 20 steps. So if you're handicapped and you go on to listen to me and hear the things that I can do to help you, then know that I also make house calls and do treatments for people in their home, or do counseling for them in their home, etc., etc., whatever you need. So let me go on to tell you more about myself. So having become a renowned medium, not only in England, but in Europe, Spain and France and some of the other countries where people would come over, especially to see me, I also was at the same time doing Mind, Body, Spirit Expos. I was always the keynote speaker, one of many, of course, because in England, those expos lasted 10 days. Yes, Friday through the following Sunday a week later. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And during that time, I would be giving a lecture on healing. I would be talking about the spirit world and what it's like. I would be giving messages from the other side. I would do workshops where I would actually do the laying of hands, as they called it in those days, which is now usually called something like EFT with tapping, or lots of names have evolved from things in those days. Reiki is what it became. It was very funny when I heard that everyone was paying thousands of dollars from Japan for all this philosophy and theology that came through the person over there, and named it Reiki, which basically means divine energy. And in that way, I'm sitting there going, really? I've been doing this for nothing for years, and giving the philosophy and theology with it too. So as I worked through the ministry in England, I also had to pull upon my study, as I started out at 16 years old as a nurse practitioner, in the sense that one learns the first level of taking care of personal cleanliness needs, feeding people, changing their diapers, all that kind of thing at 16. And my father proudly said my daughter shouldn't do those kinds of mop-up things, and that one day she will be something else, she'll come to her senses. So he let me work and do that job. But what he didn't realize was I was being trained. And so by the time I got to be 18, I'd learned a lot of nursing stuff, because some of the people in there were actually nurses who taught me. And from there I went on into state registered nurse training and did a year or so of that, and got the first qualification there. But I didn't complete because I got married and I had a baby. But I was married to someone in psychiatry and psychology, so that opened my door for me. I had friends who were psychologists and psychiatrists. I picked their brains. No, I didn't go to college and study it. I read, and then I asked questions, and then I read, and then I asked questions. I did the same with philosophy and theology and spirituality throughout my life. I went into Catholicism, I went into every kind of Christian faith that was available. I went into Buddhism. In fact, Siddhartha Buddha was the first true master who took me to understanding the life of the journey through the middle line of the dark and the light. You have to find the balance. And I had no idea who Siddhartha was in those days. So I was eternally grateful for his input. And then Muhammad, and then it goes on, Zoroaster, and different people, all these great leaders coming to me and teaching me and training me while I'm awake in a trance-like state. And as I would learn, I would then follow up physically a few days to a week later with a workshop or a talk on everything that I just downloaded from the oneness. And as I did this work, there was never any doubt in my mind that I was in the wrong pathway. From birth to today, I'm on the right pathway, and I thoroughly enjoy myself in all the ways that I work. So what do I do today? Having given you a little bit of my background, I want to go back to my child playing days. I used to collect pebbles from various places as my mother and father took me out and about for outings. And the stones that I liked to keep always seemed to me to look like they had rainbows coming out of them. It's the best way I could describe it. And when I'd hold up the stone like this and say, "Look, Mummy, look," they'd look at the stone and say, "Yes, darling, nice stone." And I'd say, "No, look at the colours." And they say, "Well, yes, it's a nice brown or red or something." And I soon realized they couldn't see what I could see. In the same way, when I was ordained in this country, in America, as an ordained minister, when I was blessing the Holy Sacrament, I could see those same rainbow energies coming out of my hand as I laid them over the sacrament. And I was told later that as people took the sacrament, they began to feel this tremendous glow of warmth within their heart that spread all over their body, and everybody was astounded that this was happening to them because they all felt it. And I was astounded because it was the first time I'd seen the actual energy coming out of my hands while I was blessing the bread and the wine. And that was a major turning point in my life, because I had come to a point of study and growth with my stones that I had developed crystals to make crystal acupuncture. I had other stones, slices of geodes that came later, that I also had colored for me, or I found were already colored and put them together as a set, and I made teragram therapy. But I didn't call it that then. Long ago, when I was a child, it was healing stones, and then later it became crystal stones, and people copied me. And then we went through the periods of people wrapping copper around quartz and waving, little bits of things, and now auras and doing things like that. And I'm watching these people exploring these things, having done all these things when I was a child. In fact, with my father and my grandfather, who were both into dowsing. My grandfather founded the Dowsing Association of Great Britain when he was younger, and I had a great-grandfather who was also a dowsing, into dowsing. So I had that natural ability, and I can dowse not only to find gold, silver, or copper or something in the floor, but I can also dowse a human body. So I was able, as a healer and a very young child, to match my little pebble I'd found with a human being who needed the pebble. And so I would give them away. This was when I was very young, and people would say, "Oh, that's very nice, dear." And I'd say, "Keep it in your pocket, you'll get better." And they'd say, "All right, dear," and put it in the pocket to humor me, because hey, I'm only 8, and of course, they would come back to my mum and say, "You know that stone she gave me? I have felt better since I had it." Well, of course, what I was learning was that everything on this planet is made up of energy. And as I went into my science classes and things like that, I was absolutely enamored of learning about friction, resonation, tone, vibration, all these kinds of things that we did in experiments with bell jars and gas inside, and how chemical reactions responded when you mix certain gases together. And all the while I'm learning that in my school, I'm downloading from spirit. Now, apply that to your body. How do you think your food gets from here to the other end? what's going on? So I started to look at the anatomy and the physiology and the psychology and the psychiatry over my school years. So by the time I finally left school and went on to study my nursing, I had actually done the advanced biology, anatomy and physiology and psychology in that school. I went to a very good school, by the way. And so it was a nice foundation stone for me to be able to begin to do my things. At the same time, I was always having other spirit guides who were not quite as high as Siddhartha Buddha or Jesus or Muhammad. I started to listen to Master Chang. What I didn't know then, which came out many years later, is Master Chang was also Abraham, and they've had many different lives. So that's another thing to go into. But during my psychic years, people wanted to know their past lives. They wanted to know their journey. They wanted to know why they were here. Why were they suffering? Or why was someone else more richer? And so on. And so that psychology and psychiatry turned into a reading where I was giving advice on how to behave, what to do, what not to do, and so on, and how old their spirit is, and where their vibration was, and why they were coming here. And even today, I still get requests for people to give them a soul reading. But I am so far beyond where I was back in those days that now I actually look at your soul coding. I know your archetype. I know your purpose for being in here. You might have a goal of growth or a goal of acceptance or a goal of rejection, just to name a few. And wherever you go and whatever you do, you're downloading the energy of your ancestors. So you have the energy of maybe as much as 5 to 7 generations back, where you've been watching them from the spirit world, and you have all their intonations, their characteristics, their personalities, their color of their eyes or hair or something. And you also then come through your mother and pick up the RNA and of her life's experience, and you're born as a mini-mum with a mini-grandma, mini-great-grandma, and so on back through time, which is why we've now proved that DNA goes through the woman. Yet the men also give us the DNA through the sperm. And how we correlate that into our personality and character ends up being a soul structure reading. And that takes me a good 2 hours with a person just to do that for them. But when they see it, when they hear it, when they make notes about it, they start saying, oh, I see why I'm driven to this, or I behave like this, and so on. So it's a very important kind of reading that. Then I get people who come to me, they say they're in a relationship and it's in a terrible state and they don't know what to do. Maybe he's drinking, she's drinking, someone's doing drugs, or maybe they're violent, aggressive, or whatever. So yes, I do help people who are in bad relationships either to repair them or to get out. But remember, if we want to repair something, we've both got to want to repair it, and not according to our decision as to how perfect it would be if you do it my way, but more about how do we put down the way we've been and let that be history, and how do we come together now, assuming we still have love, to build a new us, a true us, with more security and more stability and more understanding. So I do a lot of that. Now, my healing with my stones turned into crystal acupuncture. And if you think about acupuncture, and those who have had it, you know that when they put a needle into a certain point, and then they attach to it electric stimulant, then a little impulse is coming from the needle on the acupoint, and that is running up and down around your body in some way. I will point out here that no two people carry their energy in the same way, in the same pattern. So even if you did go to acupuncture school and are an acupuncturist, the points you use are not necessarily the right ones to use, because people store their patterns differently. However, if you use the ones you've been trained to use, it doesn't mean there won't be any effect. It just means you're not going to get to the core of their essence if you don't know how to use all the points. And where are the points? Well, we may as well say, you can look at my face right now, and if I say throw a pin at me, anywhere that it lands, anywhere, is going to be on a meridian. And it's either going to be an up and down meridian, a cross meridian, an oval meridian, or something on its side, higher mind, or just energy coming down from the oneness. So whatever your energy pattern is, you're unique. There's no one else like you. Even your babies are not the same because they have the history of the DNA and they have the history of the soul structure. So what do we do at Sumaris Education Center? If you have a bad relationship, you will come and have a private session. We'll have an intake and we'll find out all the things that are wrong with you. Now, if you're psychologically, emotionally, mentally depressed, you can guarantee you're going to have a lot of aches and pains and other things wrong with your body. So as we fix your heart and mind, we can then use the crystals to do crystal acupuncture to your 5 bodies. And we can use the teragrams, which incidentally is Margaret spelt backwards, because I originally called it color plate agate healing. And I couldn't register that worldwide right, so we did Margaret backwards teragram therapy, which actually is a very good word because it's got agate in there, which is what they're made of. My initials, you can do lots of anagrams and you'll see everything's there. So with the combination of crystal acupuncture and teragram therapy, reflexology, aromatherapy, where I mix up your special formula just for you because you're different from everyone else, and then put you on my table and work on you for a good 2 hours, doing acupressure and anything else I feel, the changing of your energy, friction. I can rub my hands, make different energies happen in a variety of ways. Then healing happens. For example, I worked a lot in Japan for many, many years, going over there for months at a time, 3 and 4 times a year. And so what I want to say here is I had plenty of opportunities to heal people. So, for example, women would come with a cancerous nodule in the breast, and they're talking about removing the breast and all that kind of thing, and I do my thing, and then they go back and have their scan again and so on, and where's it gone? There's no lump, no bump. Sometimes we can even feel them disappear even while I'm healing them. But you know, that only happens when a person is ready to let go of what caused it. So if you have a lump on your breast, you have to stop and say, left breast, am I giving the world to suckle from me, to take from me? Right breast, am I holding on too much and I want more? You know, there are different things. I have to teach you about the give and take, the sharing, the oneness, the conflict and its place in society, so that we learn to grow and evolve and outgrow the negative and grow into the positive. So we'll have workshops and talks about that at Sumaris Education Center. So that's the education side. But what if you need help? What if you need that crystal acupuncture and teragram therapy treatment? Then we open the clinic during the day hours by appointment. I make 1 to 2 hours appointments depending on your need. But the first thing I'll need is to see you for an intake. I want to know what your problem is, what your pain is, if you've had surgeries, your history, your medications, all that kind of thing, because I'm also a herbalist and I'm also completely understanding anatomy, physiology, so I'm going to know what's wrong with you. And if for some reason you come out with a terminology I haven't met yet, I sure have medical books that I can read up and study all about you. So I never let anything go by the way. I always learn myself. We can never be sitting on our little cushion going, I'm the greatest thing, there's nothing more to learn. Any therapist or any doctor or anybody who's helping other people in any sense of the word needs to be constantly learning something new, because we change ourselves, and as we change, we help more people. That's the idea. So I'm looking at this little brochure here. I'm just going to hold it up for you so you can have a quick look. See, it says Sumaris Center there. I want you to know I'm in partnership with my husband. That's my little emblem butterfly, because, whoops, hold it the right way, because we are all worms becoming chrysalids, coming out of that to be butterflies. Okay? And so the reason I'm holding that up is that if you want a copy of that, or you want to know more about Sumaris Center, I've got a list in there, and I'm just going to read this through just quickly for you in terms of what we do as therapy. I've already mentioned crystal acupuncture, pterogram therapy, reflexology, aromatherapy, hypnotherapy. Hypnotherapy, there are many different techniques. You'll have people who say, nobody can hypnotize me. I've tried it. It didn't work. Well, the bottom line is the therapist, whoever it was, probably didn't have enough training, didn't have study in psychology and psychiatry, and didn't know the right way to help you put you into hypnosis. Because the bottom line is, if you don't want to go into the alpha state or even deeper into the theta state, then you're going to block it consciously. You're going to say no. And I had such a man, just as an example, years ago, who was bragging that he couldn't be hypnotized. So I told him I needed him to keep his eyes open all the time. And, so of course he said, oh, that's easy, because I never go to sleep. I don't, do anything. And I did certain techniques. I won't do it with you now because I don't want to be hypnotizing you. But I did certain techniques, and his eyes got wider and wider, and the whites around the eyes got redder and redder, which is a sign someone's in hypnosis. And I then gave him the suggestions that he'd already told me he wanted to work on, but not in his words and not directly in the way he was thinking, but subliminally in a way that it would come up and up and up and up into his head in the waking hours to realize what he could do. And I'm happy to say that that person today, thanks to me, is actually in yen a millionaire. And the reason that happened was because he was offered to be a rep, and he came back to me after I'd done this hypnosis with him, and I said to him, no, you're in the reading, spirit guides are saying you're not supposed to be a rep. You're supposed to establish your own business around this. Go back and say you will open up an office and you'll be in charge of it, blah, blah, blah. Short version was he did. He's now, as I said, in yen, a millionaire. It's approximately 110, something like that, yen to a dollar. So you can see by our standards in our country, but then if you go to Africa or somewhere else, he's very rich compared with what they've got for wages for a week. So it's all relative. You have to stop and realize that everything is relative to where we live and what's coming down. Okay, and then I do a metaphysiotherapy treatment where I might even massage your whole body. I'll use shiatsu, I'll use acupuncture, I'll use chiropractic work. I am not a qualified chiropractic person because back in those days when I was nursing in England, there was only a sort of osteopath. And the osteopath would do warm things on your bones and kind of move your muscles gently and that kind of thing. Chiropractic stuff didn't really take off until much later, late 1960s, and I was nursing, of course, and 70s. And so instead of learning through a college, my spirit guide started to teach me, having been a nurse and already knowing how to move bodies, because we learned some of that in those days, how to rearrange the bones. So I actually do some manipulation where necessary, but most of the time after I've done the crystal work, when I go to push or whatever, you just pop back right in. So you might want to try that with me one day. So let's go back to counseling. Maybe you are in a job and you don't know, it's a job you took because you needed the money, but you hate it and you want to do something else, but you don't know what else you want to do, and you've always felt like you feel you want to help people, but you don't know how, when, and where, and why. Come to me and I'll give you a download channeling from your spirit guides who do know why and do know what you're doing and why you're here. Maybe you feel you have a destiny to be a spokesperson for something, but you haven't found your calling yet. Again, that can be helped. Maybe you've got an illness or a disease and you've been told you haven't got long to live. Doesn't necessarily follow, because if you change all your energies and put you on the table and do all those therapies I've been talking about, you will at least have a better quality of life. You should have more movement, and in time, if you practice and do all the things I say, including if you're on medication, working with alternative meds that don't interfere but do correlate with one another. And I might remind you that many of the medicines that you get today have actually come from plant foundations originally. And of course, scientists have learned to break down the essences of the plants into, I'm not very good on describing this, but, calcium, nitrates, whatever it is, polysaturates and so on. And so they can then remix and reblend, and that's how they are able to produce thousands of pills, because they can't get thousands of plants and things ready in a hurry to meet the supply and demand. But look what happened just recently with Vicodin, for example. And look what happened when everybody was suddenly diving into using a certain herb. So I'm not going to mention too many, I don't want to downgrade anybody. But people buy and they're easily influenced, and they swamp their bodies with herbs or plants or medicine, and then they wonder why they feel worse. The body was not made to explore strange and unusual things in large quantities. We have to move slowly. And in the same way, natural healing takes a while, takes time, but it happens. We pray a lot. But do you know what we really do when we pray a lot? We surrender our will. And we open up to God's will, which is the way of the oneness, which means we open our mind and our heart up to the higher self, the truth, and we let it run. And as it runs through us, it's changing our biochemistry. And as our biochemistry changes, we become stronger, more vibrant. I'm not bragging here, and I know you can't see all of me, but I hope you see that I don't look 76. My mind doesn't want to be in any way dated. I want to be living for as long as I want, and I'm sure you do. So why walk around with white curly hair in little circles? When I looked at my grandma like that, I said, when I get to be 65, I will not look like that. And here I am, 76. Okay, so that's one thing. Now here's another little thing I'm going to show you. Happy families. Whoops, let's get it in the middle now and up a bit. Right. Is that your family? Or do you need relationship support? So yes, I'm also trained in marriage counseling. I can ordain and marry. I'm ordained so I can marry you. I can also do funerals. I used to do a lot of those, unfortunately. But if you're in this town, in Lake Havasu City, and you feel you need a minister to help you either christen or marry or bury someone, yes, I or my husband, Dr. Stephen Van Coops, can do that under Universal Christ Church. So let me talk a little bit about Universal Christ Church. When I came home when I say home, this is my home, America. When I came over in the first time, I was, remember, still a Brit, and doing Mind, Body, and Spirit, the first one in California at the Shrine, and I was the keynote speaker. And people were amazed at how I could give messages from the dais. They would just put their hand up. I said, think about your question, I'll give you the answer. And that's how I did it. And I got through about 50, 60 people. And because there were that many there and so many more. And I was so busy. It was just incredible. And as a result of that, I was able to go on to meet my husband, who did paranormal photography at the time. We did a lot of research with his work on the brain and how it works while I'm downloading information from spirit. And so during that time, and also both of us being parents to our previous children from our previous marriages, we were able to cross-reference the aura, the vibration in the aura, with the upbringing and the conditioned thinking and feeling, thoughts, etc., about how these families integrate. So, of course, we used our my children and friends and associates and friends of friends and so on, taking these pictures and then comparing them and listening to spirit guides about what this means and what that means and so on. So when we have a dysfunctional family, the way we work is sometimes one of us will see one and then the other of us will see the other person, and we don't swap notes. So it's private. It's just like we're ministers. You come to confession in a Catholic church, nobody gives up about you. Same with us. So if I'm seeing the wife and my husband's seeing the husband of the wife, then we're not talking about what you both said, okay? Until you both say, yes, we want to come together. And at that point, we discuss the program that we think would provide you with a solid, like I'm doing here, pyramid of support, where you can emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, and practically apply new ideas, talk to one another in new style of ways. We don't realize just how much, when we talk, we can sound ungrateful. Like, if I say, would you like a cup of tea? And you just say, yeah, as opposed to, yes, please. There's a big difference. So how we communicate is very important. So, we would do a lot of work with that and helping you let go of where you learn to talk abruptly and embrace learning how to see yourself in a different light so that you can talk sweetly might be a start. Not everything is easy. We've had rape cases, we've had abuse cases, we've had people who cut themselves, this kind of mental illness stuff. I've dealt with every kind of mental, I've even had a murderer as a client. So, it's back in England many, many years ago. But, everyone needs help. That's the point. Now, there may be a few of you out there that are aware of aliens and in alien encounters, and I have to admit that I have had them since I was a little girl, and I was probably about 3.5, 4.5 when I had my very first encounter, which was to see a little person at the foot of my bed, which of course he looked blue, and I told my mummy he was all in a blue dressing gown, and my mum said dressing gown is a robe for the Americans, and she likewise said, oh, you saw it, I saw it too. And then years and years went by when I was talking about it as an adult, and she said, you remember that? And I said, yes. And when I went on to tell her it wasn't a little child, but it was rather an alien, she was like, oh, I can't believe that. So it went by the way. But the thing is, those of you who have encounters with aliens, you need someone to talk to. Some people say I want to be regressed. Sometimes I regress them, but in most cases I don't, because the fear is there. But in my case, over the years and with everything that happened, if you're interested, you can grab hold of a copy of my book, My Journey into the Oneness, online, and I read about what happened to me, because I first came out of the closet, as it were, on being an abductee and having an abductee child, which they call, oh dear, hybrid. I never called my daughter hybrid, but I was up on the spaceships a lot, training her to use her emotions. And that was a very important lesson, not only for her, but for me too, as I was evolving. And though I don't have every single time clearly in my mind, as time would go by, they allowed me to remember more and more, indeed even to say goodbye to her and many others who were put on a new planet, a new beginning. That's another long story though one day, and maybe I'll do a workshop on it. Okay, so we do family relationships. Now, what if you have a child, here we have a little child, okay, who's enjoying herself, okay, and she's playing with her bricks. But what if she suddenly got very angry because they all tumbled down, threw a loop, okay, and starts screaming and yelling, and no matter what you do, she's just going to keep it up. Because she wants what she wants it perfectly, her style, her way, straight away. Sound like an ADD child? Attention deficit disorder? Wants 100%? But what's really going on? Deep inside, she's saying, I want to do this once and once only and move on to something else. Wouldn't it be nice if we were all Einsteins in 5 seconds, okay? Patience, endurance, trust, knowing how to talk to a child, knowing how to understand their impatience, knowing how they do things that are provocations for you to be angry. Why do they want attention that way? So parenting is a big thing, and every so often I'll do a workshop, generally for people to come and listen, but of course one-on-one works much better. So if you have a child that is playing up all the time, especially in the teenage years, with your permission and a child's agreement, we will do private sessions, and I'll use any and every technique I have as my skills to get that child to really love themselves, believe in themselves, trust themselves, and of course once that happens and they blossom, then the parents see the benefit of that because they start to appreciate the parents even more. But what if the parents are bad models and the kids trying to be a parent to the parents? Okay, well, we have to deal with that. Or what if there are younger siblings who are attention getters and the older one feels left out? There's so many different problems. I'm sure you mothers and fathers listening to this will get it. Now, what about bullying? What about abuse? What about some boyfriend raping a girlfriend, so-called, when she thought he was just nice to go to the movies with? All these things a child needs to know. There's somewhere to go. So if you're a teenager and you're watching this, and you've had something happen to you, maybe you're put in a situation where 2 of your friends are doing hard drugs and you're made promises that you would never tell on them, but you know they're getting worse and worse and you can't tell their parents, and you're sworn promise that you won't. Come tell me, and we'll open the door, won't we? There's always a way to help someone, but it all begins with that person wanting to come and get help. You want to quit smoking, you want to quit doing alcohol, there's an AA underneath us. But we also take people upstairs one-on-one and work through that as well. Substance abuse, any kind of abuse of any kind, cutting yourself, I mentioned that earlier, you can come and get help. Now, you might be thinking, well, what's acupuncture like? I'm going to open up this brochure here and I'm going to try and show you where my fingers are here, and of course I'm hidden behind it, so I'm trying to see underneath. This here where my finger is tapping, those are teragrams. This one down here, that's where my center is, and I'm going to see if I can get over here and show you, point to it's very difficult when you're not looking at it. Just above my finger anyway, where my finger is now, here, right finger, that's my counseling room. So you have to come up the stairs in the middle here to get to the top floor, okay? And then I'm moving over to here. I'm doing some crystal acupuncture on a person's wrist, okay? So that's just a short thing to show you. And then we have other things as well, that brochures and things that you can take home. And here I just want to show you, I'm holding my hand so you can see where it is. These are the actual crystals, and many, many others that I have that I use. So how does that work? Energy. See it there? Whoops. Energy moves. Okay? You are a ball of energy. And so when I use the crystals, I want you to know there are hundreds and thousands of rocks on this planet, and not one stone cut from even a giant, enormous piece of rock, that's only that big. That one stone is not going to be the same in energy and the way it heals as another stone cut from the same rock. Why? Because the molecules originally cooled and became solid and formed a rock. But what gas was in there versus some gas in this one? And how did they interact? Their molecules form different ways. So no two stones will heal in the same way. And I'm very fortunate in that I know which stone to use on you, and you will know I'm using it because you will feel energy either leaving you, which is what we want to get rid of the negativity, more relaxed, more at peace, or you'll feel tingles or little cold, sudden, sharp feeling, whoop, and it's gone as fast as you felt it. It's a memory. There are many, many things that we remember subliminally, but consciously we only remember about 10% of all that's in our brain. But your brain is busy marking your body with every emotion and every image you've ever seen and every sound that you've listened to, even if it's a shocking sound. So when I work on you, I'm working on your 5-body consciousness, your physical, etheric, spirit, higher mind and soul body, and I'm working on your chakras, which are the vortices of energy that keep the energy of the 5 bodies in your physical body so that you can stay here and live the best that you can in the ways that you can according to the world that you've chosen to live into. The last thing that I need to say and I have to address is obviously we can't run on love, period. So yes, I do charge money. Those who don't have any money at all, we have free days. We give back. We heal as much as we can and as much as is possible to do in the time that we have, just the same as if you were paying us. But for those who can pay us, if you live locally, we charge $150 an hour. We do not take insurance. We do not take Medicare or Medicaid. Why? Because by the time we put ourselves through it, we'll be lucky if we get $25. So if you're hard up like that and you're an old senior, $25 is accepted because that's more something rather than nothing. Those of you who are working or millionaires or whatever, we appreciate your support in helping us to pay our electric, gas bills for heating, especially now. Donations are very much accepted. Thank you to Universal Christ Church. And we will make sure that it does pay the way for that building that we're in now. Jeannie Chow's been very good in giving us that place to use, but it does cost to heat in the winter and to cool in the summer. So if you need to donate some money, yes please, because we are hurting and we're struggling to keep open. We've had 4 rainouts where the roof has leaked. Poor Jeannie has had to repair it several times, and that has made us close our doors. Plus, I travel around the world teaching still, and now I'm focused on doing talks at expos or conferences. And so if you're watching this and you would like me to come to your place and give a talk, please invite me. If you're asking me to attend out of state or far away, like down in Tucson or something, I do have expenses and I do need to be paid. But I am open and receptive to any way that I can help people to get better and be strong. But what if you're already a therapist? What if you want to learn more? I can teach you to become a metaphysiotherapist. In other words, through 5 levels with intensive courses of 4 to 6 days, or spread out over a month, depending on how we work it all out in the States. Then we will put you through courses with other students. You will take exams. It's not easy. You got to be dedicated. And as you learn and study metaphysiotherapy with me, from level 1 to level 5, you will become a teacher, and you will be able to go on under Universal Christ Church and Sumaris Education Center with your diplomas and your qualifications to teach practice for 3 or 4 or 5 years. And when you've done that and you've kept us up to date on what you've done, I can then open the door for you to get your PhD. Nice? So think about that. I have said a lot, I've been talking a lot on this video, and I thank you for staying with me, because if you stayed with me all this time, then you are definitely someone who is either needing counseling or healing, or needs closure on losing someone, or is stuck in a rut and doesn't know what to do next, or is using in some way, and maybe you're just totally depressed and suicidal. All of these things and more I can help you with. So let me help you. I do have packages for those who are able to pay. You can go to sumariscenter.com. It's sumariscenter.com. Okay? We've had that up a long time, and we're redoing it, so it's a little bit here and there, but you'll see enough, I think, from there. Be so kind as to leave your name, your interests, and your email. When I know what your interests are, then I can connect with you and let you know what I'm doing. If you're wanting to study with me, that would be very important. If you want help, then that's also important for you. So one last thing to give you is on the website you will find our phone numbers, so that you can contact either myself or Dr. Stephen Van Coops, and we will be happy to chat with you, explaining even more, and make you an appointment if necessary, or invite you to an upcoming workshop that we're going to have in the nearby future. So I want to say thank you very much for listening to my long spiel about Sumaris Psychic Education Center and Clinic. Now that is the full title of my charter, Sumaris Psychic and Education Center and Clinic. But we're just calling it in Lake Havasu, Sumaris Education Center and Clinic. It's at 2060 West Acoma, Acoma Boulevard, Lake Havasu City, Arizona, 86403. Okay? Like I said, if you want to find us, go to sumariscenter.com and contact us, and we'll make arrangements accordingly. Be happy, be well. Warning: 2019 will make you change your point of view, whether you like it or not. Don't wait till all the what's the expression, all the shit hits, excuse my language, but hits the fan. Prepare, get ready for it, adapt. Let me help you. Bye bye.